Right, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Mary Eleanor Power, and I am the Director of Marketing and Communications for Dalhousie University's Faculty of Open Learning and Career Development. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Dalhousie University is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We are all treaty people. And today I'd like to welcome Roy Kaushik, who is going to lead us through the next 30 minutes, covering some information in the Certificate in DevOps and Cloud Fundamentals. Roy is an enterprise data professional with multiple postgraduate degrees in computational sciences and has been working in the field for more than a decade. He has been part of large-scale projects in financial, biological, telecom, and geospatial enterprises. Roy is known to reduce complex ideas into simple, readily usable concepts and is extremely approachable for any kind of technical assistance. Through his associations with various universities in Canada, he regularly advocates data literacy. And in his free time, Roy is a public speaker at meetups like the Toronto Machine Learning Society. Wonderful for you to join us today, Roy, from balmy Ontario. I say balmy only because it's probably a little bit warmer there than it is here. So welcome, and I will pass it over to you. And just one housekeeping note before I do that, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to add them in the chat, and we will reserve some time at the end to cover them. And I have included a link to the certificate if you're interested in learning more. I do have a hand raised from Javid, one of our attendees. Oh, and he's just lowered, they've just lowered their hand. So if you do have questions, feel free to either raise your hand, be more than happy to, if you prefer to deliver your question verbally, that's perfectly fine. We'll reserve some time at the end. Otherwise, please just type them in the chat. And Roy, over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for all the attendees who are attending this session. This is my name is Kaushik Roy, and today we are working with Dalhousie University to deliver a small sort of memoranda on how DevOps is driving the business, and whether you should really invest time into it or not. Right? Awesome. So with that, we go to the introduction of our topic today, which is the business value of DevOps, right? And what we are going for here is not really a deep dive of DevOps. We are not going to go into very technical stuff, but we are going to skim the top, and we are going to see at some metrics and why DevOps is important. Also, we are going to introduce the course that we are having with Dalhousie University, through the Faculty of Open Learning and Career Development. So what we are going for here is just to know about the philosophy of continuous improvement and some reasons into why we should be adopting it. So here is our table of contents today. So we have about less than 10 topics actually. First, we'll go a little bit about myself, a few lines. And then we will go into what is DevOps, some of the business metrics that DevOps drives in the business, and some of the capabilities of DevOps that can give you in your company that maybe you already have or you are not having and you want to achieve in the future. Right? I'll also talk a little bit about the path to improvement, what you can do to improve your culture and deployments, and discuss some of the key findings that we have in this research, right? After that, we are going to introduce the certificate in DevOps that we are giving through the Faculty of Open Learning, and a little bit about the modules, so what you are going to learn and what are the broad topics that you can achieve through this course, right? After that, we can have some time for the questions. Okay, so let's go to the instructor profile quickly. So I've been in the big data analytics space for about 10 years now, more than 10 years. And I have to practice DevOps on a daily basis so that my deployments work fine. I also write articles in Azure IoT community blogs. And in my free time, I speak, I do gaming, and I'm just like another normal person. Okay. So now let's get introduced into DevOps. We'll know about what DevOps is. And what is the scope of DevOps? So when we say something like DevOps, it's not really a word in the dictionary, right? If today you open the dictionary, you will not find DevOps in the dictionary, maybe in the future, right? But currently, it's a technical term that is a mixture of two words. It's first development and then operations, right? So when you say development, what are we developing? Development can be of anything. It can be a bridge, it can be a software, it can be an application, and all the apps that you see on your mobile go through a DevOps process. So development of X, anything you develop, you must have a plan that this is what I'm going to develop and this is my goal. Now, while you're doing all those things, you will have a lot of operations, a lot of people behind it, resources, time, energy, planning, things going wrong, and for records and maintenance and things like that. So you will have development and then you will have operations. And people have just mixed these two words to form a word called DevOps because these two always go hand in hand, right? Now, we in the software development life cycle, especially, we know about things like agile software practices like waterfall models and all those, and lean approaches, right? But even this has some drawbacks, and this is not able to exactly connect all the teams, the cross-functional teams that are there. The agile and lean was not just enough by themselves. What we needed is an evolution of those principles, and that is what we inculcate in the philosophy of DevOps, right? So in DevOps, it's better than agile, it's better than lean processes, and it decreases the disconnect and increases net efficiency. So there's a lot of, when there is a big teams working on a one particular project, you will have a lot of disconnect between them. And to increase efficiency, you have to you have to use DevOps, right? But actually, when I say DevOps, it's not actually the only ops in the future. So ops, you can see operations can come through anything like AI. You can have things like AI ops. You can have chat ops. So you have a chat system where everybody is chatting, right? And there's a lot of operational data that is being generated during that process. So you will have chat ops. And then there's something even called no ops, where people do not want any kind of operation, but that itself has to be a new thing. So these are all new concepts and research things that future companies are going to use. But these are currently being started right now, right? Okay, so once we know what DevOps can do, it can work with big data, it can work with small applications, and it can also work across teams and across softwares and hardwares and everything. Right? Now we have to see what are the business metrics that DevOps uses. And this is important because if a thing, suppose DevOps is something very good, if we cannot measure how good that thing is, we will never be able to actually adopt good practices and better ourselves, right? So to do that, what we have to do is to see what are the numbers, how much improvement are we gaining from what we were previously to what we are going to be in future, right? And then there are 4 or 5 very important metrics that I think companies like Google have come up, right? These important metrics are deployment frequency. So that represents how frequently you are deploying and releasing to your users. Suppose you are Instagram, you are Facebook, or you are even a small company that is running an app. How frequently are you able to put your new version of the app out there into the world? That is a KPI. That is something that we can measure. We can say we deploy every 2 months. People even deploy, big companies deploy even multiple times per day, as you can see in this chat, in this chart, right? So this chart on the right is taken from a DevOps research that Google has done, and there were about 32,000 professionals involved in giving these numbers. They have divided all the companies into 4 categories who are using DevOps, right, based on their DevOps usage. The first is the elite category, who are absolutely on the right track to use all the DevOps things that are available. Then you have things like high users of DevOps, you have medium users, and then you have low users. So maybe they have a huge number of failures, or they are a very small company, they do not have resources. So maybe they are medium or high users of DevOps. If you are big companies and you are deploying like multiple times a day, then you are surely on a good track to become one of the elite users of DevOps as per Google, right? Um, the other metrics are lead time for changes. So how much time do you take to get a request for a change and then serve and deploy that into production? So this is different from a deployment frequency, because in deployment you are doing a major release. But in lead time for changes, you are just getting a change request, serving that request, and then the application is restored, right? If you can do this within less than 1 hour, that is the best case. Then you are obviously an elite user. You begin from the creation of the issue to solving, testing, and then deployment. So elite users will do this in less than 1 hour, right? Not always, but on an average. The next metric is time to restore service. So if your service is down, remember that just a few weeks ago, Facebook was down for about 6 hours. And Facebook, everybody is talking about. If a small application goes down, nobody is talking about. Which means that this is absolutely impactful in how people see your business, right? So the time to restore your service, if you can do that in less than 1 hour, fine. So does that make Facebook a high user instead of an elite user if their application was down for more than 6 hours? Not actually, because on an average they will do this within less than 1 hour, right? If it is a very big application, something major happening, only then they take that amount of time. So that still makes them an elite user of DevOps, right? Another is the change failure rate. So you make a change, you suddenly you see that somewhere down the line the change has failed, and then you again have to do the change request, deploy, and everything. So this, if you are doing it very often, then you are not an elite user. You're probably a high or a medium or a low user. If you can reduce this to 0 to 15%, then you are one of the elite users of DevOps. So you can see, just by looking at this chart, you can make a mental map of what kind of a DevOps user you are and how it benefits the company, right? So just to go through the list again, you have things like deployment frequency, lead time for changes, time to restore service, and change failure rate. If you can manage these things, then you have something called operational reliability. So these things are the main things that contribute towards operational reliability. Okay. And how will your results be? So these are actual numbers that are taken from that research. The industry actually is continuing to accelerate DevOps usage. Every year, we have more and more companies who are adopting DevOps principles, right? But then how much improvement can you hope to gain in future? What is the promise that DevOps is showing you? The promise is mainly in terms of throughput and stability, right? So if you have deployment frequency and lead time for changes, that is something that is related to throughput. If you have change failure rate or time to restore service, that is more on the lines of stability. So you should have probably more throughput and more stability. These are the two things that you should always hope to get the metrics right? So on the left, you will see that how much performance gains have elite performers gained from their DevOps usage, right? So you can see that the more frequent they deploy code, they are able to gain as much as 973 times of what they used to, as compared to like other companies which are doing much less. On the right, if you compare the chart parallelly, from 2018 to 2021, elite users have gained a 26% rise in their deployment frequency than the low users, right? So these are numbers that, yeah, this is actually taken from Google, and they are claiming that, yes, the numbers are correct. So you read correctly, this is not an editorial error, right? So that's kind of meant as a joke, but still the numbers are correct. That's what it means. You will get somewhere around at least 1,000 to 2,000% increase in your productivity and decrease in failure rates. Right? Okay. So then if you want to reach these numbers, just saying that people have gotten to these numbers is not saying much. If you have to reach these numbers, what are the capabilities that you need to have in your company to be able to do all these things, right? So these capabilities are divided into generally 4 categories: technical, process, measurement, and culture. Generally, people used to think, oh, this is a very technical thing. There must be only technical. If I am very good at technical, then I'll be able to do good DevOps. That is not true. What you have to do is you have to also imbibe the culture that DevOps prescribes, right? Just being good at technical is not enough. Similarly, you have to have ways to measure things, to monitor things, to proactively catch failures. And you have to have good infrastructure, best practices. You have to have things like test data management. So if you're not testing properly, your deployments will be surely failing in future, right? You must have things like proper version control, and among all these things, you have to keep your employees satisfied. You cannot overwork them. This is one of the things that I talk about in the course. You cannot overwork them. It does not mean that they have to work like 15, 18 hours a day, right? They can work 8 to 9 hours a day and still deliver good products. So they have to learn the culture. You have to promote the culture, and there has to be some sort of a transformational leadership. So from the leader top down, we have to really tell people that you cannot overwork yourself. Please follow these guidelines. You make sure that we are able to measure everything, to process all the things, and we are technically sound. At the same time, we have a culture to look up to and to leave for the future generations, right? So these are all the 4 capabilities that you need to be good at DevOps. Now, it takes a lot of time to actually be better at all these things. Things like streamlining change approval. You need a whole suite of softwares to do all those things. So it is very important to get the ecosystem right, to get the people right, and to get your clients the correct expectations. If they're having wrong expectations, none of this is going to work, right? Okay. So how do we get there? Okay, we are not good. How do we improve? The number one way to improve is to adopt the cloud. People have been having their own data centers for a very long time, like 40, 50 years. It is time to totally move things to the cloud, and not just one cloud, multiple clouds. Currently, we have things like we have cloud vendors like Azure, GCP, AWS, and there will be more in the future, right? So the number one thing that should drive your organizational performance, if you want to do good at DevOps, is to have a multi-cloud adoption. Right now, it's not always possible to do that, but you can see that if you do adopt, then you leverage some unique benefits, and that is the number one reason why people are using multiple providers. See, the thing is that if you get locked onto one provider, then you are only kind of having a little bit of tunnel vision, right? But if you use multiple providers, all those biases are nullified and you get the absolute best product. So the number one thing that is driving people to doing good DevOps is a multi-cloud adoption. You can see that there are other reasons to other ways to improve in DevOps. For example, having a role like SRE. Nowadays, there are a lot of roles you can see even on LinkedIn and on other job portals, and they ask for site reliability engineer. This is an entirely new role, and it is very interesting to know that this is like an intersection of all the things. So you have to know a little bit of hardware, some software, some installation, some security stuff, and all those. Which is actually the last 2 parts, the third and the fourth points, which is documentation and security. You have to learn how to make live documents. People write documents that become stale, and 5 weeks down the line, all the features in the document, or even 5 years down the line, that document becomes old. People are not able to follow that document. So you have to ensure that you are using live documents. You're keeping the documents updated. You're pretty much documenting everything. Nowadays, there are a host of tools that I talk about also in the course. You have to have good security measures and good disaster recovery, right? So if you do all these things, your 2.5 teams who have quality documentation, they are more likely to succeed in their DevOps journey. Right? You can this will be available, and you can take a look at these numbers. These are taken from Google research, and if you think about them, do your own research, you'll really see the business value of DevOps. So what are the key findings that we have? We have things like SRE and DevOps are complementary philosophies, so they are not separate from each other. And you have to promote a positive team culture. You have to have good documentation, a secure software supply chain. And obviously, if you do all these things, you are going to raise the bar in terms of organizational DevOps adoption. So with that, I will introduce what we are doing in the course. The course is called Certificate in DevOps and Cloud Fundamentals. And these are the things that the attendees will be able to learn once you attend this course. So this is a 100% online program, and it consists of 3 modules. It covers different areas like some software, some culture, some history. So you have to be able to understand what DevOps is. These are the things that you're going to do in that course. You will know about CI/CD, Git, Jenkins, and Docker and Kubernetes, and a little bit about the history of software engineering also. You have to know a little bit of context to appreciate what DevOps is giving you, right? So who should attend this course? This course is for you if you are a normal IT professional who have heard about DevOps and want a little bit of more knowledge. You can be project managers and product owners who want to actually oversee CI/CD workflow. These are technical terms, which is why they need some of the DevOps skills. System operations who want to leverage DevOps into the deployment. So you suddenly ask for some big machines, you want to scale your deployments, you need these people to know DevOps. And also developers who want to understand how to deploy code and how to make sure that these are all DevOps compliant, right? So what is the first? There are 3 modules, as I said, and these are the topics, some of the topics that you will learn through these 3 modules. I did not have space to put everything, but that's what the course is for. Make sure to attend the course, a lot of interesting things. So here I talk about how developer as an operator evolved through the ages, right? Through the years. We have been using these concepts for about 40, 50, 60 years now, but in different forms and different terminology. So you learn a bit about the history. I will also talk about some of the misconceptions and the anti-patterns that are there in the market. So once you get to work and experience how the teams are doing, a lot of times the teams do it wrong. This is because they do not understand how actually the DevOps works. So I'll try to clear as many misconceptions as possible. I'll also talk about the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and basically anything as a service. The last one stands for XaaS, and that is an actual term which is known for anything as a service, right? So I will talk about all these things in the module 1. In the module 2, which is about DevOps concepts and automation artifacts, I will talk about DevOps automation lifecycle. What are the stages through which you have to take the deployments through? I'll talk about the tools that you have at your disposal to do this at scale. So you can do 10,000 deployments a day. That's what I mean by scale, not just 5 or 6 deployments. And how to orchestrate all those deployments using Docker and Kubernetes. Again, not very in-depth. These are big topics and courses by themselves, but a little bit of introduction certainly helps. If you know where things work, it's somewhere down the line, you will figure out how things work too, right? And finally, I talk about all the cloud native orchestration and the future of DevOps. The third module also has a small capstone project that I will show how to actually work on the Azure cloud. And this is more cloud specific. In the thinking process is that if you know how to do this in one cloud, this knowledge will translate to other clouds as well. So I will just show you how to do this in Azure. It's for beginners. You will learn how to use boards and GitHub and a small actual project on Azure cloud, right? So these are the 3 modules that are there in the course. It is quite comprehensive in terms of content. Make sure to attend those and give me feedback on how the course is. Also, if you can go through the Google research, the links I'll be giving in the giving below. So that research is also interesting. It talks about a lot of other things that companies are adopting. Those things I haven't had space to put in here. And if you want to recommend a good book for DevOps, I would recommend this one by Joachim Verona, which is Implement DevOps in your organization by effectively building, deploying, testing, and monitoring code. It's just as simple as that. There are no fancy words. You build, you deploy, you test, and you monitor. That's it, day in, day out. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Roy. I really appreciated your, in your presentation, just applying some of the DevOps principles to today's challenges. and the industry. I'll open it up to any questions. I didn't see any come through in the chat as you were speaking, but I'll just pause here for a few minutes and allow people some time to type, or you can certainly raise your hand as well if you have any questions. All right, we have one question here. Is the certificate paid or free for DAL students? So I'm happy to jump in and answer that. That the certificate is at a cost, so it's not free for DAL students. This is a non-credit certificate, and so it would be in addition to your academic studies if you're interested in pursuing it. But I will also mention, you can certainly, with all of our certificates, there's the opportunity to take 1 or 2 courses. Some do have prerequisites, so that's important to make note of when you are exploring the certificate. But certainly there are lots of opportunities to take standalone courses if that's of interest as well. Roy, I'm wondering just perhaps if there are others who are either typing in questions or thinking of questions, I'm wondering if you can maybe kind of give us a sense of, you're very active in the industry, and as part of your bio, we were talking about that you kind of speak on these topics in the Machine Learning Society in Toronto. What are you hearing from those in the industry? And in particular, like, what is the kind of need for folks with this skill set?
Absolutely. See, I've been working in industry, and the current reports from the last 2-3 years are that machine learning is, or rather analytics in general, are a combination of 2 things: a lot of data engineering and a lot of math, right? Now, there are a lot of people to do the math right, because there is no dearth of people who knows the math right. But the data engineering and the DevOps part is really lacking in resources. Every day I hear industry leaders telling me, give me some good DevOps resources, give me some good data engineering resources. These are the 2 things that the math people are lacking. Unless you get the data to the math, you cannot do it. The math will not create any value for you, right? So those are the major challenges that industries are facing right now.
Interesting. I'm wondering if this question came in from the Q&A, and there's also another question as well. If this applies to what you're describing, is there a flavor of DevOps for business intelligence?
Yes, there is absolutely a flavor for business intelligence. In the broader scope, it is called MLOps, because using business intelligence, you have to deploy models, right? And that is called MLOps. Now, MLOps is a little like a layer on top of DevOps. So if you know the basic principles of DevOps, you can do that much faster, much quicker, in more iterations. That will get you to your MLOps goal, because MLOps is like get the data. Business intelligence means aggregating data, right? Once you aggregate them, using those aggregate values in the real world, you have to deploy models, right? Now, you do not know which is the right model. You have to use many experiments, thousands of experiments. These experiments individually have to go through the DevOps process. And that is what MLOps is all about.
Interesting. Okay. And just a question here as well. Do you need to know project management to take the certificate? Or what would be some other complementary skills?
Other complementary skills are Excel, a lot of organization skills, taking notes, and learning about tools. Like you have to read a little bit of technical articles, open source communities. Just follow them. Do not know nothing in depth. Know what are the new open source softwares that are coming up. Why people are making things in open source instead of proprietary. So those discussions you have to have in your own mind. Why should I pay for something when I can get something for free, right? So those are the things that you have to worry about.
And I'm curious, Roy, just to kind of build on a comment that you just made, and maybe just to kind of wrap us up here, because I know we're almost at the end of our time. Can you tell us, I mean, there are so many ways that you can access this information online, and it's not just it kind of DevOps, that skill set, but others, certainly YouTube has a robust set of, how-to videos and commentary from different experts on various topics. What's the value of kind of buying into this certificate? Maybe can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I will tell you. If you go to YouTube, you will spend around at least 100 hours looking for something that I will give you in 5 minutes, right? So I have done those 100 hours of research for everybody, and then I am giving you the aggregate. This is also some kind of business intelligence. I learn about the business, gather the intel, and then summarize it for you so that you don't have to waste all that time looking for the same.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. That's a great summary. I'll pause here just for another moment and see if there are any final questions from everyone. And actually, if there are any final questions, I'll just mention something, which is that later today, we'll be sending around a recording of today's webinar, along with just the link to the certificate and contact information if you'd like to learn more. So lots of opportunity to share this information with your peers for those who aren't able to join. And just thanks so much, Roy, for your time and for putting together such a thoughtful presentation of the certificate, as well as some of the reasons why the skill set is needed in today's world. So thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us. And
Yes,
we'll wrap up from there and take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Roy. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.